Jay Walter. Okay, Jay Walter, please take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Jay Walter, Public Works Director, along with Robert Horch, Parking Services Manager, here to present this item tonight. And in order to help the community and the council understand a little bit more about this item, we'll provide a little background and some history, and then get into the revenue enhancement ideas. So from the staff's perspective, and certainly from council guidance, our parking rates serve to fund parking operations, our meters, our lots, and our structures, and they manage parking downtown. We certainly don't think parking is the destination for people downtown. The businesses and all the activities and things like that is really the destination, and we like parking to be able to help manage the traffic and the people who come down there. We do want to influence parking behavior, however, and getting more people to choose the parking structures rather than circulating around the city streets trying to find a meter is a desirable behavior, and we like to encourage that. It's the goal of the city to provide adequate funding for the next parking structure, and setting the rates and fines is part of that. And for this council, previous council direction, the Palm Napomo parking structure is the next parking structure that we are accumulating funding for. Generally, parking in areas that is in higher demand is more expensive. As you know from traveling to other cities, sometimes it's quite expensive to park in the downtown core areas, and in part, it's a cost of convenience. That is, people would be willing to pay in those cities for closer proximity to the destination they're trying to get to. A little bit of history in regards to these items tonight. Back in 2006, the council asked staff to put together a parking task force, which had external stakeholders, business leaders, the Downtown Association, the Chamber of Commerce, and representatives from our local churches. And they studied ideas for new revenues and recommended to council certain items which were adopted and others which were not. They ranged from Sunday parking to additional meters in certain areas around the downtown core. In 2009, an ad hoc parking fund committee was put together, as Councilmember Carter was a member of that. It was internally focused, and we used a parking consultant. We used a parking consultant and a financial consultant to help us evaluate the parking fund as we looked to try to afford the Palm Napomo parking garage, and really looking at what revenues we need to put in place in order to be able to afford that structure. One of the things that came out of the ad hoc committee was that regular rate increases were necessary to keep the fund going towards the goal of funding the parking garage, rather than rate increases which accumulated and became a burden for our parkers in the downtown by having too big of an increase at one time. Of course, then after 2009, the recession hit. We were also challenged with parking fine surcharges that were added to the fines that were parking tickets that were issued in the downtown for state court funding. Part of the parking fund revenue was transferred to the general fund to compensate for the police department issued parking citations. A small amount, but yet it was something that moved away from the parking fund. And the city council postponed structure and 10-hour meter rate increases 2 times, in 2009 and 2010, in recognition for the effect of the recession and the economic downturn. However, they did approve the last rate increase, which was to the 2-hour meter rates in 2009, and that was when it increased from $1 per hour to $1.25 per hour. So as a way to evaluate revenue options, at one of our recent parking fund reviews, the council asked staff to look into the possibility of extending charging for parking services to Sundays, and to increase the rate differential between parking structure rates currently at 75 cents per hour and meters in the downtown core at $1.25 per hour. At this point, continuing the presentation will be Parking Services Manager Robert Horch.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. The first issue we're going to look at is Sunday parking that you asked us to return for. In our report, we detail our rationale why we think Sunday parking is a viable option. Downtown retail is active on Sundays. Over the period of time that we've had parking in the downtown, more activity is occurring in the retail and the restaurants on Sundays. We've looked at times when businesses are opening. Most are open by 11 o'clock on Sundays. Downtown retail supports parking management on Sundays in the form of the Downtown Association meetings that we have. We've and the Chamber of Commerce in the past. What this Jay mentioned about this is about funding, but it's also about parking management. And the reason that some of the retailers have supported charging on Sunday was because on Sundays the parking is not managed. And what happens is our hourly rates and our hourly time limits and our rates are not in effect. So what effectively happens is a lot of the employees will take the prime parking location, so the spaces are not turning over as they do Monday through Saturday for the retail. And consultants, a lot smarter than I am, have shown that that turnover affects the bottom line of those businesses. Those spaces turning over allows the business to make more money, actually, because there's more access through the day rather than those spaces being parked all day and not turning over. So that was some of the reasons why in the past the downtown retail has supported this idea. We also looked at our city parking facilities. It's good to note that generally the way people park, Jay mentioned convenience, generally people park on the streets first, in their lot second, and then in the structures. Over the last year, we took a look at our parking structures, and we can run reports, and we did this on the third Sunday of every month in the last year. And we saw that all our structures showing the same thing. Activity was warranting us starting to charge at least from 11 o'clock, looking at the numbers of cars that are coming in and out of the structures. Our structures are still counting on Sundays. So our reports show that there is activity on Sundays at the least desirable place, if you will, the structures on Sundays. So that was one of the reasons why we thought Sunday was a viable choice again for you all. The other issue is a cost issue. Our structures have lights on, the elevators are running, the bathrooms are open. The people are using our other lots and our locations, which requires maintenance from the city and electricity costs for the fund. So there is, that use has a cost. And what's happening now is the people that are paying on Monday through Saturday are paying for that Sunday usage currently. So that was the rationale in the report, why we thought it was an option to start looking at Sundays. In your report, you have this matrix. It shows 5 different options on hours throughout Sundays. And on the top line, you'll see our revenue estimates. And the second line is the expenses for those activities. Now, should council we wanted to provide flexibility for council to look at this in different ways based on the testimony tonight and some of the input that they've been receiving over the last few weeks. Our recommendation, because of the use that we saw, as I stated earlier, is to charge from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. subject to tonight's meeting and the feedback that you'll hear from the public. If we can come back to the slide, open it up, and make changes. It's interactive, so it'll readjust the figures if council would like to do that. The next issue is higher rate difference. This more so than the other item is about parking habits and parking management. Our structures, again, as I explained earlier, the way people park generally, people want to park in the most convenient location. We'd like them to park in the structures to enjoy the downtown as a total experience, take their time. There's a lot of reasons for it, but we have encouragements for them to do that. The first 60 minutes is free. The rate is currently 50 cents less than what the meters on the street. But council asked to look at having a higher rate differential because there's a pending rate increase that's scheduled to go off if nothing happens on July 1st of this year. That will raise the rates in the structures from 75 cents to $1 an hour. That will lessen the cost difference to 25 cents. So we started looking at different ways of raising and lowering costs because of the aspect of the Pomo parking structure. And as Jay so eloquently talked about, some of the things that have happened post 2009, like the recession, of course, is the biggest. Our funding sources are at question. So with that in mind, we decided to reluctantly raise the hourly rates. We chose an area of 400 meters in the downtown core that have more of a parking demand, but are also in close proximity to the structures, because the goal again here was to have a higher rate differential between the meters on the streets and in the structures. So we decided on a footprint of 400 spaces that are in the downtown core. That, if it's approved tonight or later on, we'll have a rate difference of 75 cents an hour between the structure rates and the meters on street. At the same time, we're asking the 75 cent an hour be at least postponed indefinitely at this time if council goes in this direction. The map is next here. This shows the three-tiered approach. Currently, our parking is a two-tiered rate structure. The green areas on the outside are generally our 10-hour meter rates, or 10-hour meters that have a lower rate, currently of 75 cents. The gold areas, or the yellow areas on the map up there, are 2-hour meters that have the current $1.25 an hour at the higher rate. We're proposing the blue area in the middle to have the $1.50 an hour rate, and it's about 400 meters. Now, we recognize that our rate structures, if we increase that, are going to create some problems. For a 2-hour meter, which is primarily the meters in that blue area, it require people to have about $3 worth of change in their pocket or their purse or a meter key. So what we decided is in order to maybe justify or to add some value, we thought about maybe the possibility of adding 400 credit card acceptance meters that will provide a better service to the people parking downtown as a way of justifying the extra quarter an hour for these areas. The added value in this slide sort of shows what we think the added value is, and sort of reiterated by other cities that I've talked to that have already gone in this direction. The number one is better customer service, because the person parking has the convenience of as an option of using their credit card. And what that does is allows them to fully pay for the amount of time that they want, not based on the amount of change they have on them. It lowers, because of that, the second benefit is that it lowers the likelihood of someone getting a ticket. Now, we do issue parking citations, but I'd much rather people pay on the front end up front and not have a negative experience of having a parking citation. That's why we always recommend folks to park in the structures. The third benefit for this is the solar. These meters are solar powered. It's greener technology, which is a community value that's been part of our culture in this city. The fourth thing is it increases meter revenues up front. Cities that I've talked to Monterey, I've talked to Beverly Hills, talked to a lot of cities that have put these meters in. They have confirmed that they see a 20 to a 30% increase in the amount of money that people are paying, because they have the option of paying with a credit card, not based on the coins. The last two items are sort of helps the city. These meters would be networked, these 400 meters. They would provide us more data and reporting so that we could look at the usage. Unlike the meters that are on the street now, they don't have the capability unless we send someone out there and audit them and do counts and look at habits on the street. This will give us more input and more data to look at these spaces. The last thing is they send out a text message to whoever we designate, which would be our staff and our meter repairmen, when these meters are broken. When they're broken, we will get a text. So we'll be proactive versus reactive in trying to find broken meters if they're out there. So those are some of the benefits that we see. Again, we see this as an added value if it's approved for this 25 cents an hour increase. Now, the cost of these meters, we have a slide, and these are the meters. That's a picture of the meters that we're talking about right now. There's several manufacturers of these right now. We're leading with this one manufacturer because they seem to be the prevalent choice by most municipal governments at this point. Is the IPS Solar credit card meter, and you can see the breakdown here of 400 meters, what it would cost per meter. Total, it's a capital cost of about $22,335 for us to go in this direction.
And Robert, one of the things.
It's 220.
Did I say that wrong?
You said 22.
You said 22,000. That sounds good, but
No,
I think the number...
I meant 222. Excuse me, $222,335. That is an important point.
And for the council's consideration, that you can see in the picture of the meters there, really the bottom half of that is what our existing meter housings are. So this is something that can be essentially the guts and the top taken off the current meters, and this fit into those shells, so we're not completely replacing all the meters throughout that area in the downtown.
Jay or Bob, could you point out where the solar panels are on this?
It's the back panel on the top part of it. That's the back. The top part is the back side of the meter.
Just as a reminder to council, please let's use, press the buttons and then be called on before speaking. Okay, thanks. Are you through with your report?
No,
Or do you
I still have a few
Okay,
moments.
please continue.
There are ongoing costs and revenues that are being brought in with these meters. This is a detailed report. It's in your report showing the wireless gateway. That's the communication cost for the meters to communicate. The management system licensing fee. This is an online system that our staff can monitor the system online in your computer. Then there's the credit card transaction fee that the company charges at 13 cents per credit card transaction. We're using a 25 credit card transaction per month per meter for this analysis tonight, and that's about the median of what we found in other cities are using. Not the high end, low end, but it's about the median. The other costs involved here, the discount rate that we pay the banks. We currently do this in the city and other places, but this will increase that. We pay 1.93% of our credit card transactions, and that's figured in here. But the offsets are in here. I've already mentioned the 20 to 30% increase in the revenues, but the other offsets in this, it will save us from coin handling. We have to pay someone to collect the meters 3 times a week in these areas, and we have to pay for a guard company or armored transport to come up from Los Angeles to take our coins back and count them. So we will save in the costs of processing coins with these meters. And a lot of the cities say that it becomes either the predominant or about half the use becomes credit card by the public. They'll still have the option to use coin as well. So there'll be lower costs for our coin collection. The revenue is at the bottom of the slide there. We estimate that we'll bring in, after the first year, about $244,800. And if you offset that with the costs above, we'll bring in for a full year $218,475. So roughly in just over a year, the capital investment I showed on the slide before, our return on investment will be just over a year as a full implementation. Now there is in your report, there's the extra to the extra column to your right. We will not be able to do this day one if it's approved from the beginning of the council. If the council approves this, it will take some time to develop the RFP, do some testing, get these meters in place. So the first year we're seeing about 9 months. We'll have the capital costs, of course, but we will have lower revenues the first 9 months of the year if we start this in November as our guess, based on what we've learned from other cities and from the manufacturers. This is sort of a recap of both revenue enhancements. The only thing I failed to mention earlier, it is in your report, the first line, the Sunday revenues and expenses, the first year there is a $11,000 cost for replacing stickers, signs, and programming things for Sundays. That will be offset from the bottom line of the $244,859 in that first year, so it will be $230,000 roughly. The other credit card meters, you'll show the first year that there is higher costs, so there's not as much revenues. But the second year and third year after, we're realizing, if both of these are approved, another $466,940 annually if these are approved. Stakeholder input. Jay introduced me as the parking manager, but I'm also the downtown champion. I have an opportunity now to meet with a lot more folks downtown, and it's broadened my horizons, if you will. But we met with the Downtown Association, a couple of committees. We've talked to the chamber that's here tonight as well. But the Downtown Association is supporting our Sunday parking based on the decisions based on council tonight, but not the rate increase. They felt, I believe, Deborah Cash is here tonight, but their belief, their board is that because of the economic times, they questioned the $1.50 increase. The mission has also weighed in. You received a red file. The mission is opposed to charging on Sundays because they have services all day long. 2 churches want us to start either at noon or 1, and another church wants us to start at 1 o'clock. And that's the feedback that we've received. I think you've received that information in your red files. Council choices. Parking rate increases are always difficult. No one, even in good times, no one wants to increase parking rates. And so the trend in the city is the councils either can do this and adopt smaller periodic rate increases and keep the parking fund healthy and moving towards the Palm of the Pomo parking structure. And that's traditionally what we've done. Or we can wait. And if we wait, then we're going to have to adopt larger scale rate increases. They're a little bit more difficult to stomach. And staff does not recommend that type of rate increases because it will be a wholesale large increase rather than periodic smaller increases. And that's basically why we've supported the two recommendations in your report tonight. And the three recommendations in your report is charge for parking on Sundays from 11 to 6 beginning on July 1st of this year. 2 is to increase the meter rates from $1.25 to $1.50 an hour in the new SuperCore that was on that map beginning approximately November of 2011 and keep the structure rates at 75 cents an hour. The 3rd is to direct staff to pursue the purchase and installation of approximately 400 credit card meters to improve customer services by November 2011 as well. Questions?
Thank you. We do have some questions here. First from Mr. Ashbaugh, and then from Mr. Carter. Mr. Ashbaugh.
Thank you, Bob. I know you noted the objection that Old Mission Church had in the written communication. I have an oral communication, and I wondered if you or any of my colleagues here have heard similarly that based on the Mass schedule that I understand, which they have morning masses and then a 12:45 Mass, and then a 6 o'clock Mass, that their objections to a much more limited span of time are not as there is some flexibility on that. Is that have you had any conversations about that letter too, or with mission representatives?
I have not, but I was told that someone representing the mission would be here to speak this evening.
Yeah, hopefully there will be. I just wanted to know if you had. Thank you. Second question. Your estimate of increased revenues there, does it include any assumptions about increased fine revenues, or would that just be from estimated additional meter collections?
It was only on the revenue up there up front, the money coming in for the meters, not for fines.
And hopefully there won't be any fines.
That's our hope. I mean, ideally we'd like to work ourselves out of fines if that's possible ever.
And now I'd like to call on Mr. Carter,
excuse me, I have a
please.
third question. Very
Yeah,
quickly.
if you could just get in the queue again, please, I'd appreciate
All right.
that. Mr. Carter?
Before I ask my question, I do want to acknowledge that Michael Morris is here. I know he's going to speak on behalf of the mission. I spoke with him earlier today. Obviously, that wasn't my question. Bob, it might be helpful, I think, if you could, basically the credit card meters cost, at your estimate, $495 per meter. It might be helpful for the rest of the council and for the audience if you could put that in frame of context. You'd provided, and when I met with you last week, what the cost of a digital meter is and what the cost of, if we increase the rates but didn't buy the credit card meter, what the cost of the increased vault would be. That just might help put things in perspective.
Surely I can do that. Our typical meter, if we have to replace everything, the pole, the meter, the casing, and everything, right now it's about $575 to $600 per meter. And if we don't go forward with the credit card meters, it would necessitate larger vaults because we anticipate more coin coming in, and that would cost about $180 per meter. And we would also probably have to increase our collections to at least 4 times a week from 3 times a week, and we would pay more for the processing with the armored transport to Los Angeles.
Thank you. Now I'd like to call on Kathy Smith, please.
Jay, I wanted to address a question to you. You were kind enough to give me information on the garage, which you projected to be opening in 2014 or 15 at a cost of about $20 million. What if there were no increases voted in behalf of this evening? How would that impact your fund for that garage?
Essentially, it would take away our ability to be fully funded as we move towards construction of the garage. We also are depending upon the Garden Street Terraces and Chinatown projects for significant revenues to be applied towards the fund. But if we don't have either one of these two revenue enhancements, and for some reason the council would choose to defer the rate increase that's scheduled for July, it will jeopardize our ability to fund the garage.
Okay. May I ask Robert a question? I'd like to ask you, Robert, if you feel it would be cost effective for us to raise the rates on a fewer number of meters than 400. If we wanted to target a smaller number of meters, would that be cost effective for us?
It would be less additional revenues and less costs. I'm not sure it would take us to the goal. I do have another slide here, if you will. Oops, I'm going to get out of this one. We'll go right down here. This is a map of where we think the two issues that we were looking at in the previous map was where the highest demand was, and this map represent where we feel is the highest demand in the downtown based upon the people that are parking. And this is the observation from my staff that's in the field. This is a lower amount for about 170 meters, and we can, of course, go even lower than that and strategically place
The blue is 140?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't stretch as far. The only problem is it doesn't get closer to the structures. That's the only problem. So the objective that we were given by council was to have a higher rate difference between the street meters and the structure rates. It doesn't necessarily achieve that, but it will raise the rates of those meters there, and we can do that. And I went to the Liberty. I thought I might have been asked this, to what the costs would be. That those are the capital costs if we did 170 in that zone at $95,000. And then if I can go to the next slide, it will bring in about $104,000 of extra revenues with the costs of, and it's not adding up there correctly. It looks like it will lower the costs. I'd have to look at that slide. I did this real quick in anticipation that I might get asked this tonight. But it would bring in less revenues, cost less to implement, and it's unforeseen what it would have the effect on the structures, though.
Okay. Thank you.
Now I'd like to call on Mr. Ashbaugh.
Back to my question as to the nature of the revenue estimates, if I may. How much of that revenue estimate that would, on Sunday parking only, would you, if any, are you anticipating from garage revenues? Or is that only from the additional meter revenues? Is it a mix of both meters and garage?
It's in your report. I can go to that slide here if you give me a moment to go backwards. Right here.
Structures, I see.
The structures are the top line.
Okay.
The streets and lots are broken out separately.
And if we're looking at revenues, then, for example, if we took your recommendations 11 to 6 p.m., then just to clarify, structure revenue would be $56,000 for 100, but costs $19,000. So if we just took those two figures and subtracted them, we're looking at roughly $30,000 in revenue for that 7-hour period, net revenue, just for the garage.
It's roughly, yeah.
30,000 of the 244. Thank you.
And now Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you. I noticed in the staff report, Robert, that you've given us a list of some exploring some additional revenue enhancements. And I noticed one of them is increasing the daily hours till 8 o'clock. Is there any reason that that was not projected further to really include that very generous late night consumer that's around and who would love to feed the meter till 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm just wondering why that was not considered as an additional revenue enhancement. Did we not give you direction?
We did not receive direction that in that specific location or that option, if you will. We did explore this as a way of providing a more flexibility and options to council, though, because we have seen more activity later at night. Our current structures are open and serving the public till 8 o'clock Monday through Friday, and on Thursday through Saturday they're open till midnight or 11:30. The streets and the meters on the streets and the lots we stop enforcing at 6 o'clock. So in your report there is an option. It's not as well fleshed out as the ones that we provided tonight, and we have not had any stakeholder input from those. But that is in your report as an option and flexibility for you guys to look at.
And extending that later, of course, too,
yes,
is an option. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Mr. Carter?
This is somewhat probably related to the question Kathy asked. How many meters are there in lots 3 and 11, which under one scenario, the scenario you put in our packet, had it being SuperCore, under the thing you showed didn't?
Lot 3 has 75 meters. Lot 11 has 63 meters.
Okay, the second question, and this is simply because it always comes up. It's come up a little bit in the press coverage and the radio coverage. Maybe you can just review for people why our parking fines have gone up so dramatically, and obviously to let folks know it's the state, not the city.
You want to do it? No, I wish. In the last 3 years, we've seen 2 increases from the state to fund court operations. The first one was I'm trying to think, $9.50, which is rounded up to $10, and then the other one was a $3 increase that happened 2 years later. With the state budget the way it is, they may be coming back for more. I don't want to say definitively, but that has been a real sticking point for our office. I mean, when we raised the meter rates the last time from $1 to $1.25, there was some, concerns at the outset. But once the meter rates changed, we didn't hear a lot of pushback from the public. We hear a lot of pushback from the public on the extra amount of fines. And as much as we try to share that information, it's not us. It feels like it's us. And we do a lot. We even itemize it on. We have it's noted on the parking citation itself to give people some extra information if they choose. But it's been a very difficult thing. The aspect of it has been it's lowered our fine revenues quite a bit too, because I think more people, because of the higher rates, it's having a deterrent effect, if you will, on people that are their parking habits. So that there's been some benefit, more people park in the structures. We've tried to market our structures again as a place you won't, the likelihood of getting a parking citation is significantly less in a structure than it is anywhere on the streets. And we make change for people. We have a whole list of like 10 top things to park in the structures. But you were asking about the surcharges. They are significant, and it was a quick $13, if you will, that were put on the city that we had to pass through the ratepayer, unfortunately.
Thank you. Are there any more questions of staff at this point? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to turn to public comment now, please. If you would like to comment, thanks, on this item, just fill out a yellow card and give it to our city clerk. I'm going to call a couple of names at once and ask people to line up at the podium, please. The first one is Gary Fowler. The next one is Frank Defoe. The next one is Phil Gray. Please state your name.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Gary Fowler, Mill Street, San Luis Obispo. As a resident of the city for 45 years and having lived near the downtown at the same location all those years, I feel that I know the city pretty well. As the parking director has mentioned to the city staff, and the delicate balance is needed between parking fee increases and the providing of additional parking spaces. I do not support the construction of the parking structure at Napomo, Palm, and Monterey, and never have, and I still will not support that. If you ask for a vote in their special election, I think you will find that a majority of city residents do not support the structure at this location, but rather a structure on the other side of Marsh Street to relieve some of the parking problems in the old part of town. No one doubts or questions the excellent job that the parking department does. Do we need this large, expensive structure at this location? And many others do not think so, as well as myself. I've talked to many of the business people in the downtown area, and they do not support this parking structure. The majority of the people that do support it are people who do not live in the city of San Luis Obispo, but yet they have a business maybe here. The city already owns all the property there at that location and provides some parking there at the present time at Napomo and Palm. It seems they want to provide space for a new little theater more than honor the wishes of the city residents at that structure. A lot of people in the Downtown Association are supposed to support the idea, and again, I've talked to many of those as well as Chamber of Commerce individuals, and they do not support it. And I suggest if the Downtown Association says they're supporting this, I'd like to see a vote from all of their members, not just their board of directors, but all of their members, to see how the vote would go. The downtown is already looking like a ghost town as museos and now the Novel Experience bookstore are closing due to high rents. And now you're asking to raise meter rates and charge for Sunday parking, which probably will bring in more parking tickets now that if this takes place. If you want a landslide of votes against the extension of their half-cent sales tax, just raise these meter rates. And when that half-cent sales tax comes back up, I think you'll have a number of people that will vote against it. You as a council had better try to encourage the property owners of the downtown property to lower their rental rates through some type of incentive, or you're going to have an even more hollow-looking core of what used to be downtown locations as Mr. Kruger's tours take place. And since Museos is closing, I hope that you'll remove the metal fencing that's around that location, so making it more pedestrian friendly. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank Default, then Bill Gray, then David Brody. Please line up. Thank you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Frank Default, and I live here in the city. Madam Mayor and the City Council. Is there a secret committee that's goal is to keep people from downtown somewhere? Because if it is, they're doing a real good job. And I don't think you need a degree in economics or marketing to figure this out, especially in the current downturn in the economy, where it costs $70 to fill up your tank of gas in your car. Businesses are closing downtown, as Mr. Fowler just attested to, because people are cutting back and not spending as much. Plus, people have more choices where to shop and where they're spend their money without parking fees at all. My wife and I used to frequent Carmel. We used to go there about maybe 6 times a year and get away for a few days. And that's until one Sunday we were there. And we parked the car and we had a nice dinner and breakfast and so forth. We came back and it was a ticket. I didn't know that it was running on Sunday, and the ticket was $45. We don't go to Carmel anymore. We go to Pacific Grove, where their parking fees are less and they don't charge on Sunday. And I heard the different comments about in the graphs and all that type of thing. And what people see is just another way of the city generating money from their pocketbook. And that's just street talk. That's just common sense to me. And whatever amount of added income you take in on Sunday, you're going to lose it in sales revenues, in sales tax. And also the impact it is going to have on the churches if you keep this Sunday meter in place and collect the added revenue. And I just see it, as a lot of people see it, it's just another way of getting into the citizens' pockets and having this on Sunday. I just don't think it's a good idea, and especially the impacts it will have on the Mission and the other churches downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Phil Gray, then David Brody, then Aaron Benton.
Good evening. I'm Phil Gray, 1320 Archer Street in San Luis. I'm a member of Grace Church's parking committee. And the mere fact that Grace has a parking committee indicates how seriously we look at the parking problem in the downtown and how it interacts with our congregation. I'd like to make 3 quick points. 1, revenue. You've got some estimates on the wall, but I don't think there's a chance that they'll come true. Basically, the estimates for the structures, for example, were based on the present Sunday occupancy of the structures, but that's with free parking. Everybody knows that as you raise a price of an object, the quantity of it that's bought by the public, assuming they have a choice, drops. So if you suddenly start charging for parking, the occupancy of the structure and of many parking spaces will decrease. So your revenue is necessarily overstated once any fees come in. Second, the inconvenience factor. Speaking for Grace Church, we have 2 services, 9 and 10:45, and there's a Sunday school and a church service at each time. Many of us attend both of them, so we arrive at 8:45 in the morning and leave about 12:30. That means that any meter starting time before 1 o'clock would be extremely inconvenient, because it would mean that either we'd have to feed a meter for hours that that weren't really being charged there, or come out in the middle of our Sunday morning at church and stuff a meter. We really, neither one of those is a good approach. Third point, discouragement. Many of Grace's visitors are just looking. They're visiting different churches. They haven't gone to church very much. That's the kind of person that we would like to join us. But a $2 or $3 or $4 charge or a parking ticket will, in many cases, make them go elsewhere or just stay home. We think that would be tragic. Our recommendation, start charging at 1 o'clock. And that would accomplish the other goal of the Downtown Business Association, to keep the employees from parking all day. Any number of hours of parking, paid parking, would require them to leave their job and feed a meter. They won't do it. They'll go to their present approach of parking a little further away, and that will accomplish the goal. I see now I've got a red light in front of me, but I've said everything I need to say, so I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. David Brody, Aaron Benton, and then Dave Romero.
David Brody, San Luis Obispo. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I think I'm swimming upstream here. I believe that the council or the city should be exploring really innovative, creative ways of handling movement of transport and parking for the city. And my sense is that some of the programs that have been looked at previously are based on old models and not on new models. And with that in mind, I am, where are we? First of all, San Luis is a 7-day week city. It's not a 6-day week or a 5-day week city. It's a 7-day week. And why charge only on 6 days when it's a 7-day week? It seems to be prejudiced against people who would maybe find it more convenient to have no parking fees on Mondays, as some have mentioned, and or on some other day of the week. So once you start selecting out a day, it seems prejudicial. So based on that, I think that the parking, there should be parking meters on Sundays from at least 11 to 6, even earlier. I think that could be considered. Secondly, the rate of parking, $1.25 to $1.50. So if people park for 2 hours, they're only paying 50 cents more for the 2 hours that they park. I cannot see that being a deterrent for any shoppers coming downtown. I truly cannot. If they're coming in downtown to spend, who knows, $10, $20, $30 or more, they're not going to worry about 50 cents more for parking. So that's with the 2-hour limit. So I'm in agreement with that. And then the third point was the credit card. I am in agreement with that. There are some of the pros are, of course, I think you may have mentioned them, the people don't overpay as they sometimes do with a parking meter, and they don't have to go back to feed the meter. Those are the pros. And the negatives, that maybe some people will stay too long and therefore take up the meter for a longer period of time.
Can you wrap up, please?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I'm strongly recommending that you have trial runs for all sorts of different alternatives here for this, because this is really important for the future of the downtown of San Luis Obispo, particularly the shopping. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Aaron Betton, then Jody Fry, Dave Romero, then Will Powers. Is Aaron here? Looks like no. Okay. Then we're going to go to Jody Fry and Dave Romero, then Will Powers.
Hi, I'm Jody, and I live in San Luis. And when I read this in the paper, I thought, oh my God, that's really going to be a bad thing. I get handicap parking, so it doesn't affect me, but it does affect other people. And I don't actually know where I'm going with anything at the moment. my mind went blank. But I think you need to reassess the parking fees on Sunday, because we're losing all of our parking spaces. Copeland is the one who is supposed to help pay for part of that parking garage. And it's really far away, especially for the handicapped people. And I don't know about the terrace thing, but the terrace thing was supposed to pay for the parking, but we're supposed to give them a loan. And it's a lot of the information I'm getting on so many of these things are confusing, because some days it's one way, then the other day it's another way, so I never really know for sure where anybody's going on anything. So I just want to let you guys know that it is confusing, at least for me. And if you could be a little more clearer exactly what the plan truly is, instead of all the stuff. And the paper didn't say anything about how much any of this was going to cost, only about what the revenue was. So, you know, I mean, to me, that's kind of a half-informed public. So they really can't make a choice on that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Dave Romero, Will Powers, and then Pierre Rademacher.
Good evening. I'm David Romero. Lived in Skylark Lane for over 50 years. The council decision to increase parking rates and charge for Sunday parking will be difficult for you, as it was for me in time past. After careful consideration of all points of view, the council must finally decide on the basis of what is best for the long-term interest of the community. For me, longer-term interest of the community is best served by adequate and convenient parking in downtown to assure the prosperity of our community. The city is wisely planning to construct its next parking structure to coincide with the completion of the Garden Terrace and the Chinatown projects. These projects will reduce existing parking and create the need for additional parking to serve commercial needs in downtown. The city must have adequate funding to proceed with this plan. However, parking fund revenues have been flat for the last couple of years, creating the need for the recommended actions, which I support. In times past, stores in downtown were closed on Sunday with limited parking demand. However, current merchandising practices now have created a very active shopping atmosphere in downtown, similar to every other day of the week. Without parking enforcement, there is a tendency for some to occupy downtown parking spaces for extended periods of time, thus making them unavailable for shoppers. The proposed Sunday enforcement and the tiered rate for core parking will encourage long-term parkers to relocate to the perimeter of downtown, thus leaving more spaces for those who value convenience. Although the 11 in the morning starting time for Sunday enforcement provides some flexibility, several major churches are located downtown and have services extending beyond 11 in the morning, as you heard this evening. This creates a considerable problem for those attending the services. A reasonable compromise could be reached by something staff did not bring up with all the alternatives, by not extending the 10-hour meters to include Sunday, thereby creating a minor city revenue loss, but a wonderful accommodation for those attending late morning services. Gives them quite a bit of flexibility. Grace Church and the Mission would both benefit. In closing, I'd like to thank each of you for serving on the council, particularly during these hard times, and for making the difficult decisions that you must to assure the long-term benefits, the best interest of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will Powers, and then Pierre Rademacher, and then Michael Morris.
Good evening. I'm Will Powers, Costco Gas's #1 fan, resident of the coast for almost 30 years, resident of downtown San Luis, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I try to keep everything in context whenever I look at anything like this. I know it's very easy to get provincial and narrow in our focus, but let's always keep in mind that California will continue to careen toward bankruptcy as long as we have Proposition 13 in its current state. Unless it is modified to include commercial property and to bring things up to date for people who can afford it, we will remain on the path to bankruptcy. And I'd like to see local people start the movement from the ground up to get the state to become realistic about Proposition 13. I know it's considered the third rail of politics, but a lot of you guys are pretty secure in your positions, and you might want to consider being courageous about this. It shows up in things like having those increases in fees on the parking fines. Those happen because the state is out of money, and they keep looking for every place they can grab money. And they're out of money because we've got people sitting in homes that they purchased 20 years ago, and they're using 2011 services and paying fees on the cost of the house they bought in 1985. And that's ridiculous, and it's part of the oligarchy that moves us toward third world status in this country. Secondly, I would recommend that the people who choose which brand of meter we use be people who had nothing whatsoever to do with the selection of the traffic signals at Ella and Johnson. Those are traffic stopping nightmares, and anybody who was dumb enough to choose those and continue to use them and operate them in the ridiculous manner they're being used ought to have nothing to do with choosing the meters that are used downtown. Thirdly, as far as the SuperCore meters downtown, I certainly support all 400 of them, and I think they ought to be identified as such with some kind of a message that indicates to people that if they'd move outward just a bit, they could save some money. From what I've seen, present company possibly included, people walking a little further might benefit the condition of their bodies. And finally, I would suggest that I do support 11 to 6, increasing the meters. As a bicycle rider and a walker, the more people who walk and ride bikes, the better. And if these people want to sit downtown and walk a few feet to the stores, let them pay extra for it.
Thank you very much. Pierre Rademacher, Michael Morris, and then Marilyn Porcells.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Pierre Rademacher. I live on Mill Street, right around the corner. I'm here this evening representing the Downtown Association, and I'm the current chair for about a week and a half now. I'm the chair of the parking committee, so this one landed in my lap. And we love Robert, we really do. But we had some concerns, and you've got a letter from us, and the parking committee actually supported all the staff recommendations. They were really enthusiastic about the credit cards, by the way. And the reason we were enthusiastic is because we understand the management issues that Robert and his staff is dealing with. And right now, Sunday parking, as is expressed in your staff report, Sunday parking is not free. Sunday parking is subsidized by the other 6 days. And that's a concept that I think a lot of people don't see. It has to do with maintenance, it has to do with utility expenses and so forth. So, and depreciation on the properties themselves and repairs and all the rest of it. So when we understand that, because the parking committee, and I've been on that committee since God knows when, I think the mid 80s, we understand those things. We deal with them on a pretty regular basis. When those recommendations went to our board, which I'm also a member of, and it's a little more diverse group of business people than the parking folks, which are all kind of policy wonks on parking. We had a very lively discussion, and it evolved around a lot of other things too, including the effect on the local churches and so forth. And that's why we didn't recommend any particular hourly segment. And I think Kathy was at that meeting, I believe. We didn't recommend a specific timing to the council because we felt that's your job. Politics, religion, and now parking, all on the same topic, are very difficult issues. And I think politics is your game and not ours. So we didn't recommend that. The rate increase we think was poorly timed because of the economy. And I know that, not that it's unwarranted, I think that the idea of the SuperCore is a great concept. Pay for the convenience, a little less as you move out. I think it makes a lot of sense. And you may come to that conclusion tonight, but it wasn't supported by our board. The other item that was tossed around, but again, the timing didn't seem right, was the idea that the timing be the same all 7 days of the week and go like 10 to 6 or something like that instead of 9, because its stores don't open until 10 anyway. And it simplifies signage. And I think the message is a lot simpler there, but I don't think Robert had time to do the spreadsheet on that option. So in summary, we support the credit card technology. We think that's excellent and probably ought to be expanded throughout the entire district. We discourage the increase in the core fees at the moment. Right now, but possibly eventually would be a good idea. And we are in favor of the concept of charging on Sunday, but the leaving the hours up to you folks. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael Morris, Marilyn Porcells, and then Ken Porche.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Michael Morris. I'm here speaking this evening on behalf of the Old Mission Church, and this evening I am not a paid advocate. The church wants to address really the issue of parking on Sunday. We have 6 Sunday masses at 7, 9, 11, 12:45, 6, and 7:30 in the evening. Under the staff proposal, the 11, 12:45, and 6 o'clock masses would be affected. It seems the goal is to deal with parking flow in the commercial downtown area employee parking, and to meet the fiscal needs of the city. There is no specific goal to target churchgoers, obviously, with this matter. Other cities have dealt with this in a number of different ways. Some have charged for parking on Sunday just in the areas of the city that are purely commercial, and Monterey has done that. Others, and I realize that's complicated here because we have such a mix between the commercial and the churches. Others have provided free parking in certain lots or structures in the city. And the city of Santa Cruz has done that. They charge in some of their lots and some of their parking structures on Sunday, but others they do not. And then some cities have dealt with it simply by resisting the temptation to impose parking fees on Sunday. That would certainly include apparently Pacific Grove. Even Carmel gives you 2 hours free on the street. Fresno, Paso Robles, a lot of places just don't charge on Sunday. San Luis Obispo has been a leader in so many things as a city. It would be unfortunate if it was a leader in imposing parking fees on Sunday. If you must consider doing this, then I would suggest two things. First, restrict the time of day to that period which achieves the goal of improving parking flow. For example, 2 in the afternoon to 6 in the evening. This would minimize the effect on churchgoers. The second would be to continue to allow free parking in designated areas, such as the garages, which seems to also achieve your goal of moving the employees from downtown to the garages, again, freeing up the spaces closer to businesses. In the nearly 240 years that the Old Mission has been the centerpiece of San Luis Obispo, no one has ever paid for parking to attend a church service, whether good times or challenging times. I trust that you will find a way to achieve your goals without imposing a parking fee on those of us who want to go to church on Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marilyn Forcells, Ken Porch, Stu Jenkins, and then Kevin Rice. Please just state your name and city of residence.
Okay.
Thank you.
Marilyn Forcellis. I live here in the city over by Meadow Park off of South Street. I've spoken before from the council, and I agree with Dave. It's a tough job in these times to find revenue. But I don't think this is a good time to project to putting in another parking structure. I've had an opportunity to hear a lot of comments from people that I respect. I'm glad I'm kind of lower on coming up here, so I can kind of sort through it and think about a few things. Some of the things have already been addressed. I think that if you start just enforcing a core, it's going to cost more for enforcement for people just circling, taking care of that. You know, again, I think that it would be too expensive to try to enforce that on Sunday. So I'm against even the core thing. I think that, again, I think that if you just enforce it at the core, the people that usually park in the core will just start spreading out. But I think I agree with Mike that it would be a good idea to keep it free in the parking structures. If people are not used to using that, maybe they would start thinking about that. Even the employees, if they, if we kept those free, there should be other ways of talking to businesses to make sure that the businesses encourage their employees not to be parking on the street, that they understand that their jobs are dependent upon that. I'm also worried about the advent of more businesses out on Los Osos Valley Road that have free parking, and Target and restaurants and so on. People will leave the downtown core if they don't find their needs here being met, which is free parking on Sundays. I think also our pastor, I am a member of Grace Church, Tim Thule, said today on the news, his comment was a lot of people come to the churches on Sunday and it becomes a social time for them afterwards, and they're more inclined to then go to the downtown core and go to restaurants where they can walk to from their churches. I think you'll agree that your churches are important here. The police feel that also, that they've always been important to the core of the cities. I also speak from being a docent at the Jack House and being a city volunteer, that I think, again, we want to keep things open on Sunday, because if we start doing it in the core, oh, maybe this really works for us, you're going to push out, and then eventually we won't have any parking for free on Marsh Street in front of the Jack House. And so that's part of the parks. And the park on Mitchell Park has meters too. So I think the meter thing, we need to quiet that down and use the existing services that we have and try to get the employees to do the right thing, to not be parking on the street. And if the Downtown Business Association could take that on, they could go in and encourage free parking in the parking structures, park there, keep the revenues in the downtown area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ken Porsche. Am I pronouncing your name correctly, sir?
I am. My name is Ken Porsche.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I, as well as a bunch of my family, live here in San Luis Obispo. We happen to own Charles Shoe Store. My daughter here, she runs it. We own the property there. And a little disturbed from the standpoint of an expensive presentation made by the parking administrator here. Very expensive. Our businesses have been difficult in the last 2 years, and more we're getting problems from the city, one of which Dave took 5 parking spaces away from us in our area. Dave did. And you're trying to force a lot of people like myself to go into structures. Some of the people will not go into structures and they'll shop elsewhere. That's a detriment to our business. We look and elected and voted for you to actually put a cap on the expenditures of this city. Our business has been tough. We've had to make some tough judgments to stay in business. I'm very sorry to hear that the lady from Museos is leaving. She worked awfully hard in the thing and had to move because of the relocation there. And it's a shame to lose these people. I hope that you will be very careful in the way you spend the money that belongs to the city. We help you earn it. We want you to be very careful in the way you spend it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now Stuart Jenkins and then Kevin Rice.
Good evening, Mayor Marks, members of the council. I'm Stu Jenkins, and I've lived in San Luis Obispo County and San Luis Obispo City since 1961. A little full disclosure, I walk to the Presbyterian Church when I go, and I'm wearing my shoes from Charles. I'd like to speak in support of most of the staff recommendation. This city has a tremendous difficulty meeting its own budget. And as a old rock rib Presbyterian, and I know I'm not the only one here, I'm just going to quote the New Testament. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Give unto God what is God's. Caesar, or the government, provides us the streets and the parking areas. And those of us who go to church benefit from that every Sunday. Like the former mayor, I'm old enough to remember the blue laws, when you couldn't trade or do business on Sundays, and we've now gotten past that. The city has to maintain police protection. The city has to maintain services on Sunday. The city has to maintain the extra wear and tear on the parking spaces and the streets. And of course, the city needs to build new parking structures to keep the downtown core vital. It seems to me, though, there are a couple of things that could be improved in the proposal. And I sort of go in the opposite direction. You know, parking meters are activated at 9 a.m. every morning on the weekday, and they close down at 6. If you have the same times, all you have to do is paint out that little part of the sign that says except on Sundays. You're going to save money. If the city does not go with the new credit card systems, and I understand it's convenient, you will actually be able to create an extra job or two in this city by people who live in this city collecting the change. You know, the fellow in San Francisco who cleaned the change that was collected at the parking meters so that it wouldn't be dirty when it was turned into the bank just died about a year ago. I think this city has a responsibility to not only make sure that the downtown core is vital, but to make sure that there are people that can actually earn a living here. Thank you very much, and I know this is a tough decision. Oh, and of course, as president of the Lighthouse Keepers, I want to invite all of the mothers on the council to come to Mother's Day on May 8th. We have a grand feast and wonderful doings out there, so I'll just pass these on up.
Thank you. I think the fathers can come
Yeah,
too.
the fathers should call the number and make reservations. It's 540-5771.
Thank you. Sneaked in an advertisement there. Okay, Kevin Rice and then Paul Reese.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. Kevin Rice, San Luis Obispo. I just have a couple comments. Some of them are a little disjoint. I noted in the staff report the one of the main reasons people have issues with the meters is just having the change in your pocket. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. If I'm downtown and I reach in my pocket and it's dry, I'm just going to drive somewhere else in town because it's not worth it to go in and get change and then find a ticket while you're going in to get change. For the staff's benefit, since they're sitting right here, you have the little meter keys. I'm not sure what you guys exactly call those. I figure that should offer me some kind of benefit. And, well, it technically does because I don't have to have change. But for me to actually want to go get one of those and pay in advance a month or two, I want to be able to get my unused change back out of the meter when I return to my car. And that's the sole reason I've never taken place in that, because it seems like the meter companies that build these things are never interested in making them work so you can get your time back out. You just feed them and that's it. Looking at the staff report, I was kind of struck by the fact that it looks like we're paying the meter company quite a bit of money on page 7, to the tune of about $48,000 a year to some private company to operate the meters. There's a secure wireless gateway data fee, $375 per meter per month times 400 meters. A management system license fee, $2 just to have a license per each meter. That's $9,600 a year. And then, of course, the credit card transaction fee, which isn't quite laid out here fully in the math. It looks like the staff is estimating 10,000 card transactions a month, and then a credit card discount rate. So we're paying about, my calculations, close to 20% of our meter revenue is going to enrich some private company that we don't even know the name of that company here. And it seems like they're making out pretty big off of our backs. And everybody knows these meters are smart meters with radios, and they emit and talk to each other. I just thought that was kind of amusing. I'm not really a believer in that stuff, but I'm wondering where the smart meter people are. One of the comments Mr. Rademacher said was Sunday parking is subsidized by the other 6 days. Well, if we're going to start charging for Sunday, then how can we also have to raise the rates? Because it seems we'd lower the rates if we're now not going to subsidize Sunday anymore. And so I'm really against meters. I've always hated them. I do leave the downtown area and go elsewhere because of them. And that's all I got to say. I hope this doesn't go through. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Paul Reese.
Hi, Paul Reese, San Luis Obispo. So I have a lot of questions that whoever has got the intelligence here to answer them, I'd like to know. First of all, this is a quality of life issue. all of us are concerned about survival, either as individuals or as a city. But what is the true net when we take into account the full compensation of these employees? When I say the full net, I mean, what are their, not just their salary, but what do we pay for their health care? What are we going to pay for their pension plan later on in 20, 30 more years? What's it really going to cost us? Okay, so then we need to know also, what is the economic impact to all the businesses that are affected by this? What is the social benefit to all those people in Old Town who are going to have people parking there on Sundays, again, their neighborhood too? And also, what's not been mentioned today at all, as far as I know, is that one of the recommendations of the staff or the council members that nobody from the public besides me probably attended back on January 29th was to expand the neighborhoods where the meters are going to be. That's so when new meters in new neighborhoods are going to go in, maybe, are they also going to be paying these extra rates, including on Sunday? Okay, so here's another one. Why is parking free at night for those who go to the bars and get drunk? Then we have to pay for the police, and yet it's those who go to church on Sunday who are peaceful and law-abiding have to pay. Why don't we charge Saturday nights and Friday nights and Thursday nights? How much does it really cost us? Have you ever gone after 9:30 at night downtown and see how many police are there and highway patrol and sheriffs? Who's paying for all those people to go up and down our streets? And yet they get to park there for free. And yet now we go to church on Sunday, now I got to pay. Okay. I suggest that we have the parking structures free for 90 minutes again. We started at 90, then we go back to 60. Let's go back to 90. And then let's have a 2-hour limit on Sundays in the super core area with no meters, no charge on Sunday. Have it enforced with a fine and see how that works first. Can't we have just one day of the week that the government is not on our back? Also, we need to discuss with the business community all the time what the impact of this is. I don't hear that the business community really was approached. I've got some friends of mine who are business owners in downtown San Luis who refused to come tonight, and they said they're on a less than a 10% margin to survive right now, and that's pretty low. Some of them don't make any money until the last quarter of the year. All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Paul. I just have one more speaker's slip from Steve Del Martini. If anybody else would like to speak on this topic, please fill out a yellow card and give it to our city clerk. And now the technician is out of the way. Okay, see you later. Mr. Del Martini.
Hi, Steve Del Martini, San Luis Obispo. Madam Mayor, Council, Mrs. Cano. I don't really have anything gratefully and insightful to say, but usually people come up here and they tell you how long they've lived in San Luis, and that's why you should do whatever they're asking you to do. Well, I'm probably lived here longer than anybody, with the exception of Mr. Morris, maybe. So I think you should do what I want you to do, and that would be not to raise the rates on Sunday or do anything on Sunday other than have free parking. It's about the only day of the week I still come down to downtown San Luis because I find it very convenient to do so. I will say that it's interesting that people... some of the people that are speaking today for the rates were against the rates last time for an increase. Maybe some of those aren't in a political position anymore, or they just have a different attitude as far as a downtown improvement area or something like that. I'm not really quite sure why they have a switch of view. I did find it interesting, though, on the council choices, on the council recommendations that were put up on the screen, that neither one of them had a do nothing. Both of them had recommendations to do something or a choice to do something, but nothing to do nothing. So I think that choice should have been on there as well. And I hope that, and I'll just close with this because I really am against this. I think free parking is very important to our town. I think it's been a good thing, and I think it's a bad time to have it come in. But I'll just say I hope you really listened to what Mr. Morris had to say. I thought it was very insightful and very good. So go back in your mind and maybe review those comments. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment on this item. We usually take a break at 9. I didn't do that tonight because I wanted to finish public comment. But do we want to take a break now, or do we want to continue the... Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 9:25. Thank you.